very good afternoon. If you've just joined us, we are coming to you live from our studios in Johannesburg. And it is time for a brand new weekend program. It's called Weekend in Review. It's where we take a look at some of the top stories making headlines throughout the week. Of course, it's also kept South Africans talking. I'm your host, Liesl Wilson. It's just after 1 o'clock. Let's take a look at your top stories for this hour. South Africa expels several diplomats from Lesotho and Malawi for abusing diplomatic privileges. President Cyril Ramaphosa arrived in the UK last night to join the G7 summit. And in your sports cricket, South Africa has announced Rihan Richards as the new president of the association. Well, those were a look at your headlines. Diving into the top story this week, we've seen the Kingdom of Lesotho has expressed shock and disappointment in learning of the diplomats that have been kicked out of South Africa and declared undesirable. Now, while the government says it is awaiting a formal report, it has withdrawn the said diplomats with immediate effect.
So in this particular instance, there was a time when we saw on media that South Africa, through its own investigations, through its own tax investigations, maybe through its auditing and whatever, it has found that it has lost 100 million a month. That was due to misuse of money by countries that were mentioned, and we were mentioned amongst those countries. So our people have been buying from such shops at a lower rate that has been, put. And in particular, this time they were buying alcohol, and they had opened, what do you call them, or alcohol outlets, where some of them are literally running those outlets. In some cases, they would just go by and go and deliver to such people. They made friends, I think, with some people. So they were buying in quantities that are more than what in actual fact you were supposed to buy. I could buy alcohol there to come and do party in my house or do, the consumption. Now, you are allowed, and it's bought at the lower price. But here they're buying this alcohol and then selling it out. It means that this thing must have been going on for some time. So we are going to take the report from South Africa, look at it, and then take action on the basis of that. But what I can tell you is that when a person is now declared a persona non grata, it is for the country to make sure that they clear that person outside of that country within the stipulated time, because if they stay, they will be arrested.
Now, the Malawian government has released a statement informing the public that they have conveyed their regret to the South African government, promising to take appropriate action against the diplomats upon their return. Our Justice Minister Ronald Lamola says South Africa could extradite the Guptas from the United Arab Emirates. This is prior to the two countries being party to an extradition treaty. It says that Article 44 of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, to which both countries are signatories, permitted South Africa to do so.
The applicable legal instruments, it is common cause that South Africa has persons of interest who frequent the UAE and are believed to be in the UAE. It is worth mentioning that our request for mutual legal assistance to the UAE to date was not prohibited by the fact that there was no treaties in force between the two states. All our requests were sent in terms of Article 44 of the United Nations Conventions Against Corruption, the convention. South Africa ratified the convention in 2004, and it came into force in 2005.
We've been waiting for a response, as I said, for over 3 years. The treaty doesn't really change anything because there's always been sufficient legitimate ways in which we could have cooperated. But in the spirit of cooperation, as exhibited yesterday. I certainly hope that, as the minister said in his speech, there will be a change and that there will be a positive response to our requests as soon as possible.
Well, this week also saw President Cyril Ramaphosa placing Minister of Health, Dr. Zwelinzima Vavi, on special leave. According to the statement from the presidency, this period of special leave will enable the minister to attend to allegations and investigations concerning contracts, of course, between the Department of Health and a service provider, Digital Vibes. The Special Investigating Unit is investigating this matter, and the president awaits a report on the outcome of this probe. Meanwhile, the Health Minister, Dr. Zwelinzima Vavi, has pleaded his innocence in the Digital Vibes scandal.
I had no role to play in the award of the contract, and that there was no personal benefit in this regard. Now, all of these were the issues that we put on the table for the public on the particular date. Of course, subsequent to that, some new information came to light that suggested that some money was used to fix the lights in the house. And of course, my wife was busy investigating that, and we were all shocked because the official who was working and assisting in the fixing of those that had been given the money, and so unknown to us had gone to work together with a former staff member who ended up paying this thing about 7,000 rand. And so that matter, we've said that we need full accountability to that, because the money had been paid and there was no issue. And I think some of you might have seen that there was a response from my wife on that particular issue. The subsequent other issue related to some money that were transferred to my son's account. And again, this has made the family quite unhappy, and we're quite outraged with this. And then we have had to sit down and have a conversation on that matter to indicate that the kind of relationship that was involved was inappropriate, and that, of course, at the end, all those funds would need to be returned. But the issue was that it was based on a personal relationship, which adults, as we have children at this age, people have relationships which we are not necessarily aware as to what extent they go.
Meanwhile, Minister of Tourism Mamoluko Kubani has been appointed as the acting Minister of Health until further notice. Now, we continue with more news and updates on the other side of this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Start your day with Morning Live every weekday between 6 and 9 for updates on everything you need to know before you go.
Catch up on stories making the news, your latest sports updates, weather and regular traffic reports.
Morning, Robbie.
Good morning and welcome back to Morning Live.
Make sure to kickstart your day with Morning Live every weekday between 6 and 9 on SABC2 and SABC News Channel.
You will never have a difficulty on application of a principle that you will...
Morning Live, everything you need to know before you go.
The G7, the world's most advanced economies, meeting in the United Kingdom. Global health, climate change and trade top of the agenda. Our international news desk will bring you all the updates from this year's summit. SABC News, independent, impartial.
All right, welcome back. This is the Week in Review. We continue with more news where the National Institute of Communicable Diseases has released the latest coronavirus statistics that show 8,021 new COVID-19 cases have been identified within the latest reporting period. It brings the total number of laboratory-confirmed cases to over 1,730,000. 182 COVID-19 deaths have been recorded. It brings the total number of deaths to 57,592. The latest figures reveal a positivity rate of 16.5% with a recovery rate of 92.4%. Active cases have been increased to over 74,000. Right on to some tragic news now. We've learned that a learner in KwaZulu-Natal has died in a TikTok experiment gone wrong. It's reported that the grade 7 learner died after trying to replicate something he saw on social media involving a sanitizer. For more on the story, we are joined live by KwaZulu-Natal MEC Kwazi Mshengu. MEC, a very good afternoon. I dare say good afternoon. But obviously, you know, we've seen the reports of a learner passing away. What's the latest developments coming through that you can reveal?
Good afternoon to you and to the viewers at home. Well, it was indeed an unfortunate incident that we have come to learn of. And the report that we have received is that the learner in question, who is now deceased, actually tried to experiment what they said. So she saw it on TikTok. Filled the bowl with sanitizer and tried to lit it. Which then exploded and causing severe injuries that led to her death. Now, we have been dealing with these situations of similar kinds since the beginning of reopening of school under COVID-19, where we have seen a number of learners in the province doing funny things around the COVID-19 essentials. Some spraying each other with their sanitizers, lighting these sanitizers, and all these funny things. And as a province, we have been cautioning learners at all times and actually calling on parents and educators to be more vigilant when learners are in schools to ensure that they don't digress and do these harmful things. But as we know, learners are learners. At times, they will escape the sight or the supervision of educators and try to experiment things that some have actually led to fatalities. And it's an unfortunate situation. The team of psychologists will visit the school on Monday to ensure that there's proper counseling and also the support that we can give to the family of the deceased.
Well, MEC, whilst we have you on the line, of course, we've also seen that COVID-19 cases have been on the increase. So what are some of the measures that have been put in place for the schools in KwaZulu-Natal? We do understand that KZN also has the highest matriculants in South Africa.
We continue to implement the measures that we implemented last year, June, obviously now with more experience, and we are trying to perfect some of the things that we thought had some gaps in the process. But we are also competing with the situation where some of the educators and learners and employees within the schooling environment are lowering their guards, which is a phenomenon that we see in society, where people are starting really to come to terms, or have come to terms that it is COVID-19 is with us, and they've lowered their guards in terms of ensuring that they follow all the necessary protective measures. So we have seen some cluster of cases in isolated schools in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, particularly around Tugela and Umzinyathi district, where I think one of the schools that was reported yesterday had a cluster of 10 infections reported from the learners. But so far, we don't see any cause for concern or rather calls for closure of schools. We don't think that it is appropriate at this stage. We continue, obviously, to impress upon the educators as well as the learners to continue to exercise to the maximum all these non-pharmaceutical measures to ensure that they prevent the spread of COVID-19. So we continue to sanitize our schools, clean them, provide learners and educators with masks, and all these non-negotiable essentials that we agreed to when we reopened schools under COVID-19 for the first time last year. So we believe also that the vaccination program, which we are anticipating to be started very soon, will also help to deal with the panic that is in school in terms of the infections as they arise.
All right, MEC Kwasi Mshengu, we'll leave that conversation there. Of course, KwaZulu-Natal Education MEC Kwasi Mshengu updating us on the latest surrounding the incident that, of course, occurred in the province where a learner died after a failed TikTok experiment. While as load shedding is expected to continue throughout the week, we've seen government announcing changes to the Electricity Regulation Act. The amendment Schedule 2 will increase nurses' licensing threshold, and it will cut through red tape to allow for more independent power producers to generate and sell electricity. Now, the threshold for embedded generation projects will also see increase from 1 megawatt to 100 megawatts. The announcement came from President Cyril Ramaphosa as he outlined government's economic recovery plans during a virtual briefing. He acknowledged the negative impact of rolling power cuts on South Africa and said Eskom would continue to be a mega player in the industry, but will face competition.
Following an extensive public consultation process and discussions within our own ranks in government and discussions between the Minister of Minerals, Energy and myself, and also a significant amount of technical work undertaken by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, we will be amending Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act to increase the NERSA licensing threshold for embedded generation projects from 1 megawatt to 100 megawatts. This intervention reflects our determination to take the necessary action to achieve energy security and to reduce the impact of load shedding on businesses and households across the country.
Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa is attending the G7 summit proceedings in the United Kingdom today. South Africa is one of a handful of invited guest nations. The three-day summit officially kicked off yesterday, where sessions so far have focused on global recovery from the pandemic, and there have been some big pledges for girls' education as well. And we'll continue to track that story throughout the weekend. But moving on to more local news now, former Lily mine workers continue to receive financial relief. This comes after 5 years since the mine collapsed in Barberton, Mpumalanga. The mine had since been closed, but workers were still owed their salaries by former owners. A new mining company planning on acquiring and reopening Lily mine, Komanzi, has been facilitating the process of paying more than 500 employees. The payments, which started this week, follows interventions by the Lomshio Traditional Council under the leadership of Chief Tikontele Dlamini.
We're talking a percentage in the region of around 75 to 80% so far. We haven't closed the offers to employees, and we're still accepting offers via email from those former employees that were unable to attend in person on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, or who now live far away from where the mines are located. We're going to keep our offer open until the 25th of June, and we are receiving offers on a daily basis via email.
Meanwhile, former Lily mine workers are grateful for the Lomshio Traditional Council, which has intervened, and that the company is keen on acquiring the mine, is also offering some financial relief to them all.
This new bidding company, Komanzi, we've engaged with the chief. They had many meetings. These are the fruits of those engagements. That the chief requested that you are saying you've got money to reopen the mine, to retrieve the container. Therefore, I request as the chief, the owner of the land, that you assist my people, especially the former employees or the employees rather, with some financial relief. We've been busy with that process since Monday till yesterday, and it's still open for those who can put their application or their claims via email.
We widely welcome that. Since our lives have been on we cannot even find the words to describe the situation that we've been, or the conditions that we've find ourselves living in on the past 5 years, of which it was a widely welcome intervention at this present moment, of which we are looking at next coming days, looking forward in taking the business rescue processes forward, so making our lives better as it was prior to the accident in 2016.
Well, moving on to some sporting action now. Acting President of the Members' Council, Rihanna Richards, has been elected unopposed. Was the new president of Cricket South Africa, and it comes after the withdrawal of the only other nominee for the post, Donovan May. Mr. May has since been elected as the new vice president of Cricket South Africa, as 7 independent members have also been elected to the new board, with an 8th member to be announced in due course.
It gives me great pleasure on that basis to announce that the President of Cricket South Africa from today is Mr. Rihan Richards. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to announce your Vice President, Cricket South Africa, Mr. Donovan May, all the way from Eastern Cape. Well done, Donovan.
Without further ado, I'd like to, in alphabetical order, confirm our recommendation for appointment to the board. Mr. Norman Arendse, Senior Counsel. Mr. Stephen Budlender, Senior Counsel, Mr. Andrew Charles Hudson, Mr. Dagmo Simosizwe Simpiwe Lushaba, Mr. Parmananda Lawson Naidu, Mr. Andisa Nsubane, Mr. Mark Shepston Rayner, and Ms. Muditambi Elizabeth Ravele.
Well, just before we close off the show, we remind you of one of the biggest stories to also come out this week. We've heard the convicted murderer Aubrey Manaka has been sentenced to 2 life sentences. Manaka raped and killed 21-year-old Capricorn TVET College student Precious Ramabulana in November 23rd at Mokamene village in Botlokwa, Limpopo. Manaka was also given a sentence of 8 years for breaking into a house with an intent to rape, another 15 years sentence for robbery.
The accused must stand up. In the result, the accused is sentenced as follows. Count 1, you are sentenced to 8 years imprisonment. Count 2, you are sentenced to life imprisonment. Count 3, you are sentenced to life imprisonment. Count 4, you are sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. Count 1, 3, and 4 to run concurrently with count 2. And that's my sentence.
Judge Maka Kanyako has described Manaka as a heartless man with no soul in him. Reading out his judgment, Kanyako said Manaka's actions were premeditated. He said the aggravating factors in the cases far outweighed the mitigating factors. Judge Kanyako described Manaka's action as complete disregard for the life and dignity of another person. The Ramabulana family has welcomed the judgment. The National Prosecuting Authority has weighed in on the outcome.
As MPA welcomes the sentence and hope this sentence is going to send a clear message to the rapists and murderers who are busy violating the rights of the vulnerable group. As NPA, we were ready to proceed with the trial, and the accused saw that he saw that there is no way that he can win this case. He tendered a guilty plea. We had a very watertight case, and we were knowing that this case we are going to have a good sentence. We really appreciate the sentence that we got today. It's one life. Those going to run concurrently as he had raped and murdered the deceased.
Meanwhile, the house promised to the Ramabrana family by President Ramaphosa has been completed. Rutendo Bobori, SABC News in Polokwane.
Well, that's where we leave it for now. Thank you very much for joining me for the brand new weekend program called Weekend Review. Of course, for what's coming up on the news front this coming week, you can join me once again tomorrow at 1 o'clock for a look at the week ahead. I'm Liesl Wilson, and from myself and the rest of the crew, it's goodbye for now.